Good afternoon, Cullman. My name is Nathan Hudson, longtime resident, born and raised. And today I get the chance to read to y'all again, which is great because it's one of the things that I miss most about my daughter growing up is being able to read to her every night. And I was afforded this opportunity to come in and read to y'all instead. So speaking of my daughter, she's actually the one that picked out the story we're going to read today. And we're going to read from her, my big book of fairy tales. And we're going to read a classic, The Princess and the Pea. Now, I didn't know this, but when my daughter found out that I was reading these stories, she asked me to read this because she thought that the princess was super cool when she was a child because she had a motorcycle. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, the Princess and the Pea didn't have a motorcycle, but this story does. So let's get started. There once was a young prince who wanted to marry. He had traveled all over the world in search of his queen, and still he was alone. Maybe he was extremely fussy, but it wasn't an easy task. And besides, how was he to know if all the girls who said they were princesses really were princesses? There are tall girls and short ones, intelligent ones and dumb ones, funny princesses and sad ones, and even musical ones, sighed the prince, who sometimes felt dizzy with all the choice he had. They all claimed to be genuinely royal, but perhaps they're all fakes. However, there was more to it than that. With every princess he met, he knew there was something important missing. Not one of them has all the qualities that I am searching for, and I don't love any of them, he thought as the cast of yet another show lined up to greet him. He felt frustrated and too tired to travel anymore. I'm going home, he declared. I shall enjoy my own company instead. Besides, I miss my mom and dad, not to mention my teddy bear. Back at home, the prince soon felt lonely again. He decided to join a date a princess agency. He was on the point of choosing a princess to meet from the agency catalog when there was an unexpected knock at the door. Warily, he opened the door to find a very beautiful girl sitting on a motorcycle right outside. The girl smiled sweetly, and then she explained, I'm a princess who has lost my way. Is there any chance of staying for a night, please? The prince was delighted by this unusual princess, and he immediately invited her inside. Come and meet my parents, said the prince. They'll love you, for he had already fallen in love with her at first sight. However, the queen was not so happy about the princess. She thought, this messy, bike-riding young girl could never be a princess. She didn't like the idea of her royal son spending time with her. She's an unsuitable companion for the heir to the throne, she whispered to the king. The queen was very clever, and she thought of a plan to test whether this girl was a real princess. Welcome, my dear, she said sweetly to her. You look tired, so I'm sure you'd like an early night. Please wait here while we make a bed ready for you. Then the queen made the king and the prince prepare a bed of 20 mattresses for the girl to sleep on. At the very bottom, right in the middle, the queen placed one very tiny, dried-up pea. Now we'll see, she said to herself. The girl was tired indeed. How kind of the queen to go out of her way to make me comfortable, she thought. All those mattresses look beautifully cozy. She snuggled down under the quilt, but unfortunately, she just couldn't get comfortable. She wriggled, she tossed, and turned, but nothing worked. Ouch, she cried out. There was a hard bump in the bed that felt like a mountain. Whatever can it be? The wretched girl thought. She looked under the first mattress, but there was nothing there. Of course, she didn't think of looking under the 20th mattress. Soon the girl gave up trying to sleep. She lay awake all night thinking of the young prince instead. In the morning, the girl made her way down the spiral staircase. Not only did the stairs creak, but it felt as though every bone in her body creaked as well. The king, queen, and prince were happily eating a breakfast feast at their banqueting table. Did you sleep well? The queen inquired. Oh, yes, thank you, the girl replied, not wishing to appear ungrateful. Have some breakfast, said the queen. Thank you, said the girl, stifling a yawn. She sat down at the end of the table, and the royal family resumed their feasting. The king looked up. What's that noise? he said. The family looked down the table to where the poor girl had fallen asleep over her breakfast and was snoring gently. The king was most distressed and immediately asked, "What's the matter?" "Something hard was in my bed," the girl admitted, "and now I feel battered black and blue. I didn't have a wink of sleep, to tell you the truth." To everyone's great surprise, the queen suddenly burst out into rapturous applause. "She's a real princess," she cried happily. "Only a real princess could possibly feel one tiny pea underneath 20 mattresses. Congratulations, my dear." "Hooray!" cried the prince, who had, not very secretly, been admiring her all along. And so saying, he slid the entire length of the banqueting table to be at the princess's side. He came skidding to a halt in front of her. The princess grinned shyly as he lay on the banqueting table and gazed intently into her eyes, with love in his heart. Luckily, she too was falling in love with him. The queen realized that this girl had all the qualities of a true princess. "I think she is a suitable companion for the heir to the throne after all," she whispered to the king as they tiptoed out of the banqueting hall. "I agree with you," replied the king. The prince and princess were now deeply in love with each other, and so it really was quite lucky that she was a real princess. The prince said, "If I promise never to put a pea, bean, or any other vegetable in your bed, will you marry me?" "There's nothing I'd like better," she said. Then they went for a spin on her motorcycle so that the prince could show her around the palace grounds and the rest of the royal family's land. They enjoyed themselves so much that they traveled around the kingdom for a year and a day. Then they were married in great style and had a wonderful feast with all kinds of delicious things to eat, but absolutely, positively, no peas. They lived together happily, and eventually, when the old king died, they became king and queen. Even though they were now king and queen, they continued to drive around the kingdom on her motorcycle. In fact, nothing much changed, except for one thing. The new queen sent out an order. All peas in the kingdom are to be banned forever. And they were. So good night, sweet dreams, and hopefully I'll get a chance to read to you again.